So welcome to the Voice podcast, the voice of integrity, compassion and empathy. And with this episode, I have as my guest Ryan Parke, who is a men's mental health coach, does many talks and is absolutely fascinating. So I would really highly recommend just take a moment and listen to this podcast to understand men's mental health and where we're going wrong basically as society to address this, which is one of the biggest killer in our men in our society of the suicide, which then leads into heart disease, cancer and prostate cancer. So if you're a man listening, this is really important. This is a fundamental part I feel will be a shift for you in your health and empowerment. And for the women out there that's listening, this is really important too, to certainly be able to understand how to support men if they're going through mental health issues. So thank you for listening. And to get hold of Ryan, his details are listed within the details of the podcast, and also at the end, Ryan shares how to get hold of him too. Okay, thanks for listening. Take care. So welcome to the Voice podcast, the voice of integrity, compassion and empathy. And I have the wonderful Ryan Parke with me, who is the men's mental health coach. And I really wanted to get him as part of this podcast to really get a different angle, a different perspective of what it means to support men in their mental health. And being a female, I often will comment from my perspective. It's really interesting because I know it's such a huge topic which we need to support men in, and we have the expert with me today. So welcome, Ryan. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Gemma. It's great to be on The Voice. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
No, you're perfect. So first of all, I think let's if you could introduce yourself and what you got in, how you got into being a men's coach, it'd be fantastic to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, my name's Ryan Parke, and my mission is to share the science of male mental health through talks, through training and through coaching programs so that we lose less of the men that we care about to suicide. And in order to let you know what got me into this, I would wind back the clock to June 2019. And just for anyone who's listening to know, the story I'm about to tell, and actually what I talk about, does make references to suicide, just so you're aware before it comes up. So June 2019, I bumped into a lady who I had not seen in years, and I was so excited to hear the latest about her son, because Jenny's son Brad was taller than me, more muscular, some would say slightly better looking. Hard to believe, Gemma, I know, but a strong argument could have been made. But the important thing to know is that Brad had a fast car, a big house and a great job. Plus he was a dad with a loving wife. And I like to think that I was on the same trajectory as Brad, but I was just a couple of years behind because of the age difference. Then I saw the look on his mum's face and I wondered, oh no, what have I said to upset her? And she said, oh my God, Ryan, you're asking me how Brad is. You don't know. Brad's killed himself. Well, I was really taken aback by that, Gemma, for two main reasons, really. Reason number one is until that point in my life, I'd always believed that when people are successful, they will be happy. And Brad was easily the most successful person I knew. And reason number two is until that point in my life, I'd always heard and believed that the reason why men have higher rates of dying from suicide than women is because men just don't talk. And yet Brad was the most open and articulate man that I knew. In fact, I found out after Brad's death that 2 years before he died, he reached out for help. One of the ways he did that is he went to see his doctor and he said, please help. I think I'm depressed. I know I'm thinking of ending my own life. Well, Brad's doctor did what doctors are trained to do. So Brad was referred to talking therapy and prescribed antidepressants. Brad attended talking therapy, took antidepressants, and 2 months before his death, his mum, Jenny, who works in mental health herself, said Brad call me every night, tell me how you're feeling. You've got to get these feelings off your chest.
Mm.
Now, I'm not for 1 second suggesting these things didn't help Brad, Gemma. I'm sure they did. But what struck me at the time was here was a man who'd done all the things that we tell men in crisis to do, and yet he still wasn't here.
Mm.
I wondered, what else could Brad have done? Well, Brad's mum, Jenny, said to me, Ryan, you should learn about this because every 5 hours, 4 people die from suicide in the UK and Ireland. 3 of them are going to be men. In fact, at the moment in the UK and Ireland, more men aged 45 to 49 die from suicide each year than women and girls of all ages combined.
Wow.
And now I don't mean anything by that other than to give you an idea of the scale of the problem. I'm not talking about importance or anything. So I took what Jenny said really seriously. There and then I decided to set aside 1 day every week from June 2019 until the end of the year to learn everything that I could about male mental health. And on my very first day of trying to learn, I was reading a study that stopped me in my tracks because it just happened to mention there is 1 day every year where heart attacks in men jump up by potentially as much as 30%. And yet on the same day of the year, heart attacks in women go down by potentially as much as 30%. Can you guess what day that is?
I've got the 21st of June in my head, but no, I don't know. What's
Cool. It's not the 21st of June. I'll give you one more though, if you like.
uh
So heart attacks jump up in men and come down significantly in women on this 1 day.
I'm thinking it's in summer, but it's no, I can't think.
Cool.
Share.
Yep, good guess. So it's not in summer. So the day every year, this day of danger for men where heart attacks jump up and come down in women is actually the Monday after the clocks jump forward.
Oh wow. So spring, right. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So this year, 2024, it was the first Monday in April. But yeah, it's end of March, beginning of April is when daylight savings time is introduced.
Wow, okay. So does this have a lot to do with the circadian rhythm for men?
Well, kind of. So when I heard that, I had to know why. And when the clocks jump forward, we should, in theory, go to bed an hour early. But I mean, have you ever done that? I never have.
No.
We just lose an hour's sleep, right?
Yes.
So when the clocks jump forward, we have this mass experiment where so many people lose an hour's sleep. And what happens in your body when you lose an hour's sleep depends upon whether you're biologically male or biologically female. In a biologically male body, losing even 1 hour's sleep lowers testosterone for days.
Wow.
And in a male body, as testosterone goes down, the chances of having a heart attack go up. And when I learned that, I remember thinking, that's really weird. Because I don't know about you, but at the time, I had never heard anything positive about testosterone. In fact, I remember when I was a kid and there was a fight in my local pub, my parents' friends used to say, well, it's no wonder they ended up fighting. There was too much testosterone.
Yes. Yeah. It was always about the testosterone and
Yeah,
anger or the negative behavior from it.
absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I wondered, how can a hormone that causes fights in pubs also seem to protect men from having a heart attack? And I decided next week, my second day of research has to be around the subject of testosterone. So the following week comes around. My first question of the day is, why does testosterone make men aggressive? And it turns out testosterone does not make men aggressive. That is a myth that was disproven decades ago. So unfortunately on that one though, the PR just hasn't caught up with the truth.
No. No, it's still probably still thought that way,
Yes,
really, isn't it? Yeah.
absolutely.
People, children coming into their pubescent years, they suddenly get angry, frustrated. They say it's the hormones
Yep,
and
exactly.
testosterone. Mm.
Yep. And so knowing that testosterone wasn't bad, my next question was, why does it seem to protect a man's heart? Well, later on that day, I found out that not only does testosterone seem to protect a man's heart, it also seems to protect his mental health. it's been found that on average, men who are depressed have about 30% lower levels of testosterone than men who are not depressed. And the only study of its kind found that men who die from suicide have even lower levels of testosterone.
Wow.
So when I learned that, I was suddenly really interested because
Mm-hmm.
in the UK and Ireland today, the single biggest killer of men from the age of 18 to the age of 50 is suicide. Suicide in men and depression in men are both associated with having a low level of testosterone. The biggest killer of men in the UK and Ireland over the age of 50 is heart disease. Well, I quickly found out that heart disease, heart attack, heart failure, and high blood pressure in men are all preceded by and predicted by having a low level of testosterone. So the low testosterone comes first and lets you know that your heart is at risk if you're male.
So ultimately, mostly for men, mental health, physical health, testosterone.
Yes, correct. And
Okay.
and do you know what? There's even more than those two diseases. So the next biggest killer of men in the UK and Ireland after heart disease over the age of 50 is cancer.
Mm-hmm.
The most likely cancer that man would be diagnosed with is prostate cancer. The single biggest indicator that a man will develop prostate cancer, low testosterone. And in fact, low testosterone also predicts that it's going to be more difficult to treat the testosterone, to treat the prostate cancer once it occurs as well.
Right.
So the best indicator of how well you're going to do if you're diagnosed as having prostate cancer is how much testosterone do you have? The higher, the better. And the next biggest killer of men, and the biggest killer of men over the age of, I believe it's 70 in the UK and Ireland now, is Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
And low testosterone in older men is an indication that they are going to develop Alzheimer's disease in about 6 years' time.
So basically, men have this real key white flag system.
Yes.
I see us and our bodies will show up little white flags, but we just think, oh, we're getting old. But actually, their ones are saying, listen, there's something going on here. So, and they get greater and greater and greater until there's a massive brick wall or red flag, like cancer. So it feels like men are having this really key indicator very early on as to what their health is doing.
I completely agree with you. And when I started out, I thought, well, hold on a minute. Just because two things occur at the same time does not mean they're related.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I learned about it, and 5 years on, I can tell you there are very specific causal reasons why low testosterone is letting you know that there's going to be a problem in the future with your physical or mental health if you're male. And actually, I think that testosterone is the what's it called? The canary in the not the cave, the coal mine.
Oh, yes. Okay.
The canary in the coal mine. You know, the canary used to be taken down into the coal mine, and if the canary passes out or worse dies, it lets you know the oxygen's too low.
Mm-hmm.
That's testosterone in men. Unfortunately, men don't know this because not only are men not taught this, but worse, there is stigma associated with testosterone that prevents men from finding out this potentially life-saving information when it's relevant. So I started out believing that testosterone's bad and men just need to talk.
Mm.
And after about 15 hours of research, Gemma, I could see that testosterone isn't bad, it's vital. But no one had ever told me that as a 29-year-old male. And not only that, I could see that it's way too simplistic to suggest that the reason why men are dying from things is because they're not talking, because there's so much to it than that. There's
Mm.
a lot more to it than talking alone, especially because, and this is something that lots of people aren't aware of, but testosterone is a lifestyle hormone. You hear a lot that the reason why men have low testosterone is because of age. And based on my experience, I completely disagree with that. And actually, testosterone is a lifestyle hormone that comes from the specific things that we do in life, and age is not a big factor at all.
Oh, wow. So basically, we can address our lifestyle to increase testosterone.
Yes, significantly. It reacts quickly. If you know what to do, then you can greatly increase testosterone in it definitely in weeks and months, but also in less than an hour.
Okay. So what would be like the first, what is a negative effect, I guess, is the first thing, because that's the first, you need to look out what is decreasing your testosterone. You need to take that out of your life. What
Yeah,
would what would be those things that you need to start looking at?
cool. Oh, that's a really nice question. So if we look at what makes testosterone, then suddenly it becomes really clear what we need in our life, basically. So the first thing we need to know about testosterone is it's made when men sleep.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter what you do, if you're not getting good quality sleep, then your body's not going to be making decent amounts of testosterone. Specifically for men, it seems to be uninterrupted sleep. So napping is actually a real problem for men because it means you're going to sleep less time in one go. If I was to nap for an hour at lunchtime, I probably am not going to sleep for 7 to 8 hours this evening. It's all about that quality, uninterrupted sleep. That's when testosterone's made. And in fact, a 2018 study suggested, well, it found that missing even an hour's sleep seems to lower testosterone in men by roughly the equivalent of 12 years of aging.
Oh, good Lord. That's why women have children and they're the ones up at night with the kids. So,
Well,
generally,
yeah, I
so
mean,
because they can't cope with it as much.
yeah, it's actually it's quite interesting. I was giving a talk a little while ago, and I was asked loads of questions about sleep because I was speaking in a it was a police force. So they wanted to know how do I optimize my sleep because I'm working shifts. So we were talking a lot about that and practical things we can do. And one of the things that we were talking about is how napping is a real problem for people who are biologically male, but
Okay.
not a problem for people who are biologically female. In fact, sleeping for very long periods, like over 9 hours in one go, is a problem if you're female. So there seems to be this real shift. And then this lady from the audience, she said, it looks to me like men seem to have evolved to be like awake and then asleep, whereas women seem to have evolved to be able to nap and be around when the kids need it.
Mm.
And I said, well, like the thing with these, sometimes these theories they're beautiful, but we don't really have a good way of testing them. But I think what she said is definitely interesting. It carries some kind of credence, which is that for men, it's all about that 7 to 8 hours of sleep and then being awake the rest of the day. Don't nap during the day because what will happen is you'll make it harder to sleep this evening. And actually, long-term studies have found that napping is a sign of shorter life expectancy in men.
That's interesting because there's been other studies, isn't there, that would have you say have a short of 90 minutes nap
Yes.
to help you sleep at night. But then again, this is just saying that might be okay for females, but not for males.
Yeah.
And and this is the interesting thing actually, because our society has created that women and men have to be doing the same thing. And actually, biologically, we're not necessarily here to be doing it's mirroring each other doing the same thing. So it sounds like we have this complementary way of existence, and we need to dig into that. What is our natural way that's healthy and what makes us in balance? And it's just fascinating that you're showing that there's two. Women can cope with lack of sleep, whereas men cannot, and that's incredible.
From a hormonal perspective, that's what it seems. And yeah, I completely agree with you. Obviously, what we don't want to do is we don't want to make it seem like we're enforcing gender stereotypes, which we're not, but we're just appreciating that, belief, this complicated experience of being human, there is a biological engine. And if we can understand how it works, then it makes it easier for us to look after ourselves. So sleep's the single biggest factor when it comes to testosterone production. Unfortunately, as testosterone levels reduce, one of the things that happens is that causes the prostate to enlarge in men. And now they need to get up to wee several times a night. And now they're not going to sleep well. So that's a vicious cycle. The next thing is what we eat. So testosterone, like lots of vital hormones, is actually made out of natural fats.
Okay.
Since the dietary guidelines were introduced in the early 1980s in the UK to reduce fats in our diet, testosterone levels have plummeted across the Western world.
Wow. Yeah, it's a Don't eat fat, have sugar, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
And
Mm.
and people are waking up now to the fact that I mean the science is really clear on this. If you reduce fat and instead get your energy from, the worst case scenario would be sugar, but even carbohydrates like that whole grain oatmeal that you're having,
Hmm.
which seems healthy, that has a catastrophic effect on your long-term health. And, since these low fat guidelines have been introduced, rates of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and many cancers are just absolutely soaring across the Western world. So we have this big problem, which is that actually, unless you know what to eat, every time we eat sugar or carbohydrates, insulin is released.
Hmm.
So our body hates using sugar for energy. It will avoid it at all costs. That's why insulin tells your cells, I know you don't want to do it, but you've got to. You've got to use this sugar. We have to take it out of our blood because sugar in your blood is very harmful if it's at high levels. And insulin significantly reduces testosterone in men.
Wow. Okay. And this is the thing, they're showing studies now with Alzheimer's as actually another version of diabetes, isn't it?
Yes,
It's the being able to not be able to react with sugar, becoming
yes.
sensitive to it.
It's
So,
it's it's insulin resistance in the brain, and insulin resistance is such a useful thing to understand. I actually have a workshop on it called Hack Your Health,
okay.
which is in July 2024. There's a mental health charity. They're amazing. They're called the OLLIE Foundation. They're actually um, having me deliver Hack Your Health free online so anyone can attend, and it's all about what is insulin resistance, which we won't go into too much in this podcast because we could do a
Mm,
podcast on
I
insulin
know.
resistance, where it goes in your body. If your brain is insulin resistant, it's depression or type 2 diabetes. If your ovaries are insulin resistant, it causes PCOS. As insulin resistance moves, as high levels of insulin are collected in your kidneys, blood pressure raises. Heart disease is underpinned by insulin resistance. And obviously, well, not necessarily obviously, but insulin resistance of muscles is type 2 diabetes.
Wow. This is it's huge, isn't it, really, in terms of how it needs to be this massive wave coming back to how, I'm not sounding like, must go back to the way we used to live, but there's a real kind of understanding that how our bodies need to be looking at our lifestyle and the foods and the natural ways that we would have eaten and
Yes,
from source and locally. So, I mean, this is, yeah, like you say, it's another podcast talking about that one on its own, isn't it? So we'll
100%.
have to
Yeah.
do that as well, won't we?
I
So,
would love that. That would be really cool. I think, yeah, I try not to get too stuck into it, but understanding insulin is one of the reasons why low testosterone is such a problem is because low testosterone in men is an early indicator of insulin resistance.
right. Okay. And then, I mean, the body is an amazing miracle and how it naturally is trying to find its equilibrium and its balance. So
Yeah,
the thing that we could look at is food and sleep as the two things that you can do really quickly, isn't there? And what to start to focus on.
yeah,
So, I mean, there's so much we can do. And often when we're in our own mental health issues, things can feel really overwhelming. You don't sometimes feel like a rabbit in the headlights. What would be like the first easier step to make to maybe looking at your sleep, how you go to bed, what's your sort of patterning, what do you do? Is there sort of like a little bit of self-care, safe maintenance that you would suggest that you could first step you could make?
yeah. I think that's a really lovely question. I've worked with a lot of men who struggle to sleep, and often a lot of them have done, remedies that are out there, like for example, CBT for sleep. So
Hmm.
they know I'm only going to use my bed for sleep and sex. I'm gonna, if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm gonna go for a walk around, and I'm gonna sort of reinitiate the going to bed sequence. Um, but I still know lots of men who've really struggled to sleep with that. So appreciating how diet works, reducing caffeine, reducing alcohol, reducing sugar and carbohydrates help massively with sleep. However, I have three rules when it comes to sleep when I'm working with guys in my coaching practice, which I say, if you want to sleep better, number one, get up at a regular time.
Yeah.
Obviously not possible if people are doing shift work, but if someone said to me, Ryan, I'm going to make sure I'm in bed by 10 every night, I would say, no, 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 that's the wrong way round. Make sure you get up at 7.
Why is that then? Why is the waking up more important?
So if we wake up at the regular time, then we're going to start to set one of those circadian rhythms that you were talking about.
Hmm.
But also it's a bit of a control in a way, because if I'm getting up at the same time and I go to bed late tonight, tomorrow I'll be more tired. So I will start to fall asleep earlier. If I have to be in bed by the same time all the time, well, I might not be tired. So if you anchor your getting up point, that's the biggest step when it comes to making sure that you sleep well. Because if you are getting up at the same time every day and you're not sleeping, you're going to get more and more tired until you sleep.
Yeah, no, I can see that. It's kind of like putting a consistency in place, isn't it? That what you're always trying to look back as an axis to come back to. Definitely. And interesting as well, that sort of time, 7 o'clock, is where the large intestines are due to release. So it's about the bowel movement, the detoxing and letting go of everything that the body's processed during the night. So it's a good time to wake up and clear out the day before you start.
That's interesting. I didn't know that, although it does make sense. And
Yeah.
then so there's the getting up on time. What time we exercise is important. So the worst kind of exercise for sleep is no exercise.
Hmm.
But then the next thing is exercising too close before when you intend to sleep is a problem, because it means we're still running on our stress hormones, basically. So ideally, let's say someone was getting up at like 7 o'clock, if they can manage to exercise in the first 2 or 3 hours after waking up, that is brilliant for sleep in the evening. Obviously, if your circadian rhythm's different, or if you're doing shifts, it's getting that exercise in the first couple of hours after you wake up. And lastly, set and achieve a goal, even a small goal every day. And that sometimes is the last thing that makes a big difference, because, it's really easy sometimes for us to have unrewarding days. We feel like we haven't done anything. So the end result is you're in bed, you feel you haven't achieved anything. And so your mind starts trying to achieve something, and you find yourself watching YouTube shorts or TikToks or Instagram reels because you feel like you haven't quite done anything that's challenged you today, or you haven't achieved anything. So there's sort of my 3 rules for getting better sleep.
And you saying that then makes me think about purpose, whether testosterone is linking into purpose for a male as well. Because interesting, because prostate is actually comes through when people have retired, and the men equally, well, what's my purpose now? What am I here for? And it's just interesting that as you say that, set yourself a goal so you can actually feel like you've got that sense of achievement. So whether that is coming through and indoor, creating more testosterone, I don't know.
Yeah, that if there was one, if I had to do something ridiculous and narrow down what I believe to be the biggest difference between a female endocrine system, female hormone system, and a male endocrine system, male hormone system, uh, I would say it's this: positive female hormonal health and mental health in general is about feeling connected. You have this amazing psychoprotectant hormone called oxytocin, which we might talk about in a second,
Yeah.
which is basically the sort of gold standard of hormone health in women. Obviously, there's so much more to it than that, but really, positive female mental health is about feeling connected. So instinctively, then, what we want with men when we're worried about men is we want men to be more connected. We want them to open up. We want them to talk about how they feel. We want them to touch, to cuddle, to hold hands, to do things to release oxytocin.
Yeah. Which is what us women generally would go to
Of
do.
course. Yep.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's because oxytocin is a hormone that's released when we do those things, when we talk about how we feel, when we touch, when we cuddle, when we cry, when we hold hands. And oxytocin significantly reduces stress in women and in other female animals. It's incredibly powerful. In fact, there's a study that I talk about in one of my workshops called Mums with Sons, where it was found that a cuddle before a stressful experience protected women for about 25 minutes of stress.
Wow.
One cuddle protected them for at least 25 minutes. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal study, really beautifully carried out, really insightful.
Mm.
So then it's natural then, if you're biologically female, you think, well, hold on a minute. If my partner or my son is not feeling good, it must be because he's not connected to people. So he needs to touch, he needs to cuddle, he needs to hold hands, he needs to cry. But it's important for us to know that oxytocin does not reduce stress in men or in any other male animal that I know of.
So what does it do? What does oxytocin do for men?
So it has some positive effects. They're very interesting, actually. One of the things that oxytocin does in male animals and in men is, have you ever noticed that after sex, male partners go to sleep pretty easily?
Pretty much. Without going into too much detail.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's generally, that is, well, the classic cigarette fall asleep kind of
yep.
thing, isn't it? But yeah, it's that. Yeah, that's interesting.
So oxytocin, if animal studies have found if you inject a female mouse with oxytocin, it reduces her stress.
Okay,
If you inject a male mouse with oxytocin, he goes to sleep.
right. So it puts them to sleep. I
Yep.
see. So you got, yeah, because interesting, because oxytocin can come through many forms, can't it? It can be released when we're giving birth. It's cuddles with sex. So, and I think before we started this conversation, you mentioned how it can help through sex for men, but
Yes.
it depends on their relationship. Is that right?
Yeah,
So,
it does. Yeah. So I might be giving away a bit of a secret here.
mm,
But in general, the consensus, there's not much research into this, but the general consensus from what I've read about and what I've experienced in life is that oxytocin is released when women have sex under almost all circumstances, but not in men. So in men, oxytocin is released when they are in a committed relationship,
wow.
not a casual relationship. Casual relationships release improve testosterone levels in men. Committed relationships raise oxytocin levels in men.
Okay. So if in a casual, they get an increase of testosterone, but if
Yep.
it's in a committed, they fall asleep.
So in a casual relationship, men are not as tired after sex. When he's
Okay.
committed, the release of oxytocin causes him to go to sleep. So that I
Okay.
might have just given people a cheat code there to know how committed their relationships are.
Okay, that's interesting. But it's interesting, but once they've fallen asleep though, they should be getting their testosterone.
Yeah, yeah. Sleep is required for testosterone, but men in committed relationships on in general have lower levels of testosterone than men who are single.
Oh wow. Okay. So that kind of really sort of looks at how you look at relationships and society and how we go into that one committed
Yeah,
relationship.
it also tells us a lot about, self-maintenance, which is that, I wouldn't, I don't often share that fact that men who are in committed relationships have lower levels of testosterone because it sounds like I'm being harsh on relationships. I'm really not. I'm in a committed relationship. I'm married, expecting a child in September this year. Phenomenally excited about all that. It's been
Yeah.
a massively important part of my life. But it's important for me to know that because I'm in a relationship, I'm probably going to have lower levels of testosterone than when I was single and I was coming into contact with new people a lot. And so what I'm going to have to do is work harder. And when we mention the things that create testosterone, we spoke about sleep, we spoke about diet. There are also exercise is totally vital. Vitamin D is a key ingredient,
Okay.
and
Yes.
sobriety. And when I saw that list of key things that men need for a healthy level of testosterone, I remember thinking years ago, oh crap. Because you know what? I knew Brad, who died from suicide, and I know that, yeah, he did all the things that we tell men in crisis to do. He reached out for help, he went to the doctors, he attended talking therapy, he took antidepressants, he called his mum every night and told her how he was feeling. But nobody that Brad spoke to knew enough about male mental health to realize that Brad was spending all of his time at work. And I knew him well enough to know that sleep, healthy food, exercise, sunshine, and sobriety, they just weren't on Brad's list of priorities. I realized at the time they weren't on mine either, and that actually trying to be a man is something that kills a lot of men.
Mm. Oh God, you made my spine just tingle then. That's my confirmation of like, that's a yes. So that is, yeah, that kind of conditioned way of being pushing you hard, drinking, work hard, play hard, that kind of
Yeah,
actually is making you less and less healthy.
correct. Yeah.
It's
Men,
taking you further away from who you really are.
yeah. And unfortunately, men don't know this. I didn't know this because we're not given any awareness of how our body works under the bonnet. We're not told about, if we're told testosterone is bad, let's say testosterone is bad. Let's imagine it is for a second. That would mean then that sleep is bad, healthy food is bad, exercise is bad, sunshine's bad, and sobriety is bad. That doesn't make sense.
No. Nothing about our bodies is bad. This is the thing. It's often we start attacking ourselves if we think there's something wrong with us. We've
Yeah,
been naturally given these hormones. It's about finding the balance is the
absolutely.
key.
So we've
Yeah.
got we've got these two massively misunderstood hormones, which we've got testosterone for one, oxytocin for the other. So what's not understood is most people don't know is that testosterone is this amazing elixir of life for men. Making it in your own bodies is phenomenally important. Oxytocin does not lower stress in men in the way that it does for women. In fact, funnily enough, the way that oxytocin reduces stress for women, one of the ways is it binds to what are called GABA receptors in the brain. So it makes you more, it increases parasympathetic tones, so it calms you down, basically. Well, what does that in a male body? That's testosterone.
Right. And that's interesting because as women are coming through perimenopause and menopause, that's often, you need those GABA receptors are about brain fog.
Yep.
And yeah, so it's interesting that that's obviously getting low for women, the oxytocin. So
Yeah.
no, this is, I mean, there's a whole level in terms of when you look into hormones and the neurotransmitters, that's the key functioning of our body. It's like the spine of our whole function, isn't it? So
Yeah.
this is
And
fascinating, definitely. So um, I think we could obviously go on to more, and I think we'll have to do some more. We have to go do some hack your health and mums with sons, and that's something that I would really love to know more because having children coming into these ages, you really want as a mum to try and understand it from their perspective as well. So especially when you've got social media and all different things kind of interfering with things. So thank you so much, Ryan. Is there anything else? I mean, how people can get hold of you? Because just to hear you and the people that may be listening that and resonating with what you're saying, going, yeah, I need something else. Ryan sounds like that person I need to speak to. How do they get to hold of you? What's the best way of setting up an appointment?
yeah, that's a lovely question. And so, yeah, this is really what I do for a living. If this is a job, I'm definitely doing it as a job. Um, Basically, what I do is I share the science of male mental health in talks, in workshops, in training, and in my coaching program as well, where I work with a group of men for 90 days at once. And if any of this has resonated with you, you can really easily get hold of me. Just head to themenscoach.co.uk. If you fill in the contact form on there, I'll be in touch within 24 hours. You can also get me on social media. On nearly everything, I'm at the men's coach, except Instagram. I wasn't quick enough for that. On Instagram, I'm at themenscoach.co.uk, the same as my website. And yeah, do reach out if anything we've spoken about has resonated with you, and I would love to help.
Perfect. That's brilliant. And what I'll do is I'll make sure this is on the Infinity Health Hub as well. So with all your details on there too. So thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we
Yeah,
close?
I would share something actually, which is I spend a lot of time talking about biological differences between people who are biologically male and biologically female. And I hope that's never taken in the wrong way, in that I'm suggesting that, you know, uh, different biological sexes, one might be better than the other or anything like that. It's definitely not the case. The way that I see it is that by understanding these biological differences, we can be much, much better supporters, partners, and allies of one another. And my goal is that by understanding these kind of differences, we can take better care of each other. And it gets us quicker to the point where we can realize that, yes, we are all equal, but still we can take a step back and admire the differences.
Bang on. Perfect. Yes. Thank you. That's a beautiful way to finish, and we'll leave it with that. So thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Gemma.